Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to The Discriminating Gamer. You know, someone recently told me that my dad was pronounced dead. I've been saying it wrong the whole time. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to go ahead and take a look at Doctor Who Nemesis from Gale Force 9. We'll get back to the review in just a moment. I want to take a minute to ask you to check out my other channel, that is Cody Carlson PhD, where we talk about history, books on history, military history. I even post some of my lectures for my classes on there. Please check that out. Please subscribe to that channel. And now, back to the review. In Doctor Who Nemesis from Gale Force 9, 2 to 4 players take on the roles of the antagonists from the Doctor Who television series as they battle each other and attempt to rule space and time. Now, you'll have your option of different villains that you can play. You could play the Master, you can play the Daleks, etc., etc. You can go ahead and choose one of these 4 villains to play. Then what you do is you take a number of cards, and you have these kind of core cards you're playing with, and then depending on which side of your player board you're playing, you're going to get another little deck there as well. You're going to go ahead, you're going to shuffle all of those things together. You're also going to take a couple of Doctor tokens and a few other bits and pieces, a few other currencies in the game. Now you have a player board that has some various locations on it. Your Doctor initially is going to start in a space in the center there that he won't ever come back to. It's just where he starts. And you're going to have different steps that you play on your turn. First of all, you're going to have start step. If you have any cards that have been placed out in previous turns, if they have kind of a beginning at turn note on there, you can go ahead and you can begin your turn with them. But next, you're going to have the control step. And what that means is you can go ahead and you can move your Doctor to any of the 4 locations on your board. And you want to do that depending on what you can do at those locations. Now, before you take any actions at those locations, you have a minion step. Now, you're going to have a hand of cards, and you're going to draw any minions you have. Now, your minions you can place next to any one of those 4 locations to kind of protect them, or you can actually start placing your these cards on next to other people's locations around their player board to kind of contest those locations. Now, if you are at a location and you want to contest that, let's say somebody else has a card there, you want to fight, what you're going to do is you're going to kind of look at the strength and the power of that card. You're going to commit any power tokens you might have. Power tokens are one of the currencies in the game. You go ahead, you can commit power tokens. It's going to increase your score. And if you have any conflict cards, you can also add them, and they may help you in these conflicts. So what you're going to do is you're going to add up all of the power and all of the numbers you get from all these different factors. Then you're going to roll a die. You're going to add the die roll number to the number that you've already established, and then whoever wins will win that particular battle. The players may send hero cards, that's the Doctor and his companions, to your locations. You can defeat them, you can defeat a Doctor, which is a big deal. But as soon as you're up, as soon as the conflict is over, you discard all your conflict tokens. That's the end of the conflict. Next, you're going to take the action step. Essentially, you can perform any action in that location. And if it is contested, I think you can only use one of them. There's usually 2 actions in a location. I think you can only use one of them if it's contested. But anyway, you go ahead, you use all those actions that you can. You take those actions. They can be drawing cards, doing other things. Some of your cards actually have schemes on them. You can play schemes out, and these are the ways that you actually win the game by fulfilling your schemes. So there's different things you can do within those action spaces. Finally, when you get to the end phase, you're going to go ahead and complete any end of round triggers you've got on any of your cards or on the board. You're going to go ahead, you're going to discard excess power tokens. You only have a max of 5. If you've got your hand size is too big, you've got to discard down your hand size, or if you're under, you got to refill back up your hand size, and then you pass the first player token so they can begin the process. So players are going around and around, they're moving their characters to different locations, they are contesting these spaces or contesting other people's spaces on their turns, they're outfitting their minions that they're putting on these locations, and you are taking various actions and engaging in conflicts. So you go around and around, and as I say, each player is putting out different schemes that they're trying to fulfill, and the first player to fulfill their scheme wins! Doctor Who Nemesis.
Now, again, there's more going on here. That's just kind of the bare skin of the game. Now, I've said this before when I've reviewed Doctor Who games. I'm not a Doctor Who fan, and by that, I don't have anything against it. It's just something I've never watched. In the back of my head, I keep thinking I should give it a try. I should start watching some of them. Honestly, it looks like a decent show. I've never gotten into it. So this is a game that I wanted to wait, and I wanted to play with some people who had seen the show and that can kind of inform me. And that's something I usually do when I'm playing an IP game. I want to play with somebody. If I'm not familiar with the IP, I want to play with people who can kind of help to explain the theme to me a little bit. And I got to tell you, there's some games in the past that were IP games that I knew nothing about, and I ended up really enjoying them. That's happened. But here, of course, I wanted to play with somebody. So I actually took this game down to Utah. I played it started playing a game with George and Holly. And we actually only got a few rounds into it. And there was a fussy child problem. So we kind of we couldn't finish it up. So I just started playing it. So a few weeks later, I played it with another friend of mine who'd seen a few seasons of the show. And we started playing it. And I should point out, too, I've seen a lot of things online where people talk about, is this a Nemesis, right? The Nemesis, is this a version of Doctor Who but like Nemesis? And no, of course it is not. It's a very different game. In fact, the game that it most likely resembles here is Villainous. It's a lot like the Villainous game, where you've got your bad guy and you're moving him to different locations. It feels like it's very much inspired by the Villainous games. So we're playing this game, and I got to tell you right off the bat, the rule book I felt wasn't the best. I felt there were some things I tripped over in the rule book that I wasn't quite sure about. Even in the setup, the way it instructs the setup about the different cards, it just was kind of wonky, and I was really disappointed in that. I'm always disappointed when a rule book is bad, particularly when it's discussing setup, and you can't even get to the point where you're starting because of that. I was able to figure out eventually, but that was one of those things I wasn't too happy about. It's interesting too, because I'm a big fan of the Villainous system. And so I'm interested in. I found it interesting how you're doing those same kinds of things, but again, I felt like the order in which things went felt a little. It was a little, again, fiddly here. It felt like it didn't flow. It felt like it was counterintuitive because you move to a location, then you got to do other things before you can take the actions there, and it felt like it was a little counterintuitive that way. So I wasn't too wild about it, about that. The flow of the game. But when we actually really started to get into it and it started to become a little more kind of understandable, it moved pretty quickly, and it was kind of intense because it's kind of a race. You're trying to fulfill your specific objective before somebody else does, but at the same time there is player interaction because you are attacking other people, you're going there, you're doing those conflicts. So that was a very interesting part of the game, were those interactions there, and I really liked that. Now, this game, generally, I enjoyed it. I did have fun. There is some good interaction. There's some good. Like I say, that race to fulfill your scheme is pretty intense. I got a kick out of it. However, there is, I say, that certain level of fiddliness that I didn't care for. The rulebook was off, and I'm not a huge fan of the IP. Everybody I played it with enjoyed it, but they weren't necessarily in love with it, and that goes for some of the people that were familiar with the Doctor Who IP here. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to say try it before you buy it. I think this game really fundamentally is made for people that like the IP and that maybe like this kind of villainous system, although it's not really the same. But that idea of villains doing schemes and going to locations. I think those are the people that are really going to get a kick out of it. This game, it's not for me. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you once again for joining us today on The Discriminating Gamer. As always, we ask you to please leave a comment for us here on YouTube, on Board Game Geek, on our Facebook page, or on thediscriminatinggamer.com. I'd also ask you, ladies and gentlemen, if you really enjoyed this review or like the channel, please click on the Super Thanks button there and consider leaving a tip. Also, ladies and gentlemen, I would ask you to check out my other channel, that is Cody Carlson, PhD, where we talk about military history and books on history and fun things like that. It would mean a lot to me if you would subscribe to that channel and subscribe to this channel as well. We'd also ask you to please leave a thumb to this video on Board Game Geek. Ladies and gentlemen, if somebody were to ask me that if I could fight anybody, dead or alive, I'll tell you right now, I know who I'd pick. I'd pick a dead person because I'd win for sure.
It's a long time, and I've been dying.
Sorry, Doctor Who. And another news today, an area woman murdered her gaming computer.